Hello, everyone. And
Hello, hello.
welcome. This is our first Age of Aquarius community monthly webinar. I'm Carol. So it's nice to meet you guys. And I'm one of the community's resident astrologers, and I'm the one who's going to be hosting these monthly webinars once a month. And as you guys know, the theme for the first webinar is, of course, the Age of Aquarius. So joining me today, I've got, through the wonders of the internet, we've got three wonderful guests. First is Eugenia, host of the popular accessible astrology podcast, which covers a range of astrological topics from the personal and psychological to the cultural and sociological, the more macro astrology, which I really enjoy listening to. And then I've got the host of the brand new, the Daily Transcendence podcast. I think you guys just started last fall, right?
Back in November.
Yes, wonderful. So Gio D'Angelo and Ray Frusco are friends who reunited recently to create this fascinating podcast where you guys explore all sorts of esoteric, occult knowledge and questions around human consciousness and spirituality with a very heavy dose of astrology, right? I know at the end of the year, you dedicated a series of episodes to discussing the astrological ages and the shift into the age of Aquarius. So definitely recommend those podcasts. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to those as well.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
So to get us started, I'll ask you guys to introduce yourselves the way I wish everyone would introduce themselves, which is by sharing some of your natal astrological placements. Maybe placing some emphasis on the role of Aquarius in your chart, since I assume that we all probably have a heavy dose of Aquarius in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe briefly tell us a little about your background and what draws you to this topic. Well, I guess I'll actually start, since my viewers don't really know me yet either. I'm a Capricorn sun, Cancer moon, Taurus rising, and I've got Aquarius midheaven with Mercury conjunct it. And my background, well, I'm an astrologer and I'm a coach now, but my trainings as a sociologist, I did my PhD studies in social theory and historical sociology. So I spent a lot of time thinking about and studying epochal shifts and the way society changes over time. So today's topic is one of the things I most love about astrology, the fact that you can study these kind of massive, changes over time in our consciousness and then how that manifests in physical reality. So really looking forward to the conversation. So who's next?
I'll go first. My name's Ray. I'm a Gemini sun, Cancer moon, and Sagittarius rising. So I actually have that Gemini Sag, I'm battling out, I'm constantly riding that mutable energy. But with the moon in Cancer being cardinal, it kind of really grounds my emotions into those. So being very flighty and also in the 8th house, I can tend to be grounded into the occult. I can be grounded into psychology. So before that, I didn't really know how to. And using astrology, I actually ended up, gaining the insight into my own life, into my own consciousness about, these specific things ground me into reality. They make my emotions, more comfortable. And it tends to really, I might be more of a moon child. So mostly get my comfort from this stuff. But, the Gemini Sag riding that mutable line has always been the biggest obstacle is grounding, bringing myself down. But basically that's how I ended up here. All that I have a stellium in the 8th. So that actually, I've been attracted to this stuff my whole life. And it took me to actually kind of enter more into like the law of attraction and stuff like that is what really got me into it. And then when I started combining that and understanding energy into all that stuff, like the fact that energy does create reality and all that, but the astrology gave it a definition. And that's how I ended up here.
Great. Fascinating. Yep. Gio?
All right. So my name is Gio D'Angelo. First name is actually Joaquino. As you can tell, very Irish name. Just kidding. I am a Taurus sun, Pisces moon, and Virgo rising. So pretty much what brought me to astrology, I'd have to say, was when me and Ray actually reconnected after many years. And he was the one who kind of introduced it to me. And even I was familiar with astrology, but it was very like, I don't know. It was like I didn't fully quite understand it. So that helped me understand it even more. So that was probably about a little over 2 years ago now. And then that curiosity kind of just led into more, because I came from a very Christian background. But I always understood that there was more to it than just, religious type way of being. It was very spiritual for me, and it was more of a faith, I felt like. So seeing, understanding astrology and seeing how that's come into play, it really was able to put a lot of connectivity to some of the things that I actually thought about and believed in and felt. So it was nice to be able to see how those two things bridge. And then I just constantly was just like, why are we not talking about this more? Why is religion so separate sometimes? And that dove into learning more about religions and their origins and certain beliefs. And then it just led down this road. Yeah.
Wonderful. Eugenia.
Okay. Hi. Yes, I'm Eugenia Krok. I am a Gemini rising, 28.5 degrees or something like that, trine my sun at 29 degrees of Aquarius in the ninth.
There you go.
Trine my Pluto at 29 degrees in the fifth. So I'm very, the ruler of my chart is Mercury, of course, and it is in my ninth house Aquarius as well. So
There we go.
Aquarius is book. So that's my thing. That's my energy. And there's, of course, a lot of other things going on in my chart. I first got into this, I got a master's degree in psychotherapy and counseling. So I started that journey in my 20s and have been seeing astrological clients now for 13 years. So that's my thing. I have a podcast, Successful Astrology, that I've had for 6 or 7 years, something like that at this point. And it's gone through a lot of ebbs and flows. And it's been a journey to be an astrologer, especially right now. I was a very weird person for 13 years that no one respected, and all of a sudden everyone knows astrology. So it's been a really huge thing to deal with, going from being the weird one who no one really respected to now a respected person, and everybody wants to know this information now. So, but as an Aquarius, of course, I saw that coming 13 years ago, so I planned accordingly. So that is my small summary of a very long journey through this practice.
Exactly. Astrology is definitely coming into its own now at this age, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, so let's just jump into this age of Aquarius. I guess I want to get a little bit of the astronomy out of the way. I feel compelled to explain it, even though I don't have any diagrams or anything. So, but basically the astrological ages, they refer to the constellation that's the backdrop of the sun's position on the first day of spring here in the Northern Hemisphere. I guess it would be fall if you're in the global South. But so the equinox, that's the vernal equinox, and the equinox happens twice a year, and it's, basically when day and night are about the same length. And it's when the plane of the equator aligns with the path of the sun, right? The ecliptic. So for 4 or 5 millennia ago, the day of the northern vernal equinox, the sun rose into the constellation Taurus. After some centuries, it began to rise into the constellation Aries. Then about 2,100 years later, into the constellation Pisces. And now we're moving into Aquarius. And so this, retrograde shift of the starry background to the sun's position on the first day of spring is called the precession of the equinoxes. And the reason that this is happening is basically because the Earth wobbles, kind of as it spins, kind of like a top, right? And it takes a little under 26,000 years for it to finish a complete wobble, right? And so, when exactly the shift into the age of Aquarius happened is a topic of debate. Why? Because the constellations are of different sizes, and there's not a clear line in the sky saying this is where Pisces ends and this is where Aquarius begins. So some claim that the age of Aquarius started in the mid 19th century. Others say it's not shifting until closer to the year 3000. I think, I think that the International Astronomical Union, based on their estimates, they say somewhere around 2600, the year 2600. But the majority of astrologers I read are placing the shift pretty much sometime in the last century, right? Or now anywhere from kind of like the kind of 1903s, kind of the one that I always fall onto. 2012 is one that gets thrown around a lot. So why are we talking about it now? Well, there was this great conjunction, and that was the birth of this age of Aquarius community that we're in. And that was basically when Jupiter and Saturn came at 0 degrees Aquarius, now on December 21st. So maybe Eugenia, I know you talked a lot about that conjunction, the great conjunction. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the importance of this conjunction in terms of its relevance in terms of the shift into the age of Aquarius.
Yeah. Well, there's a number of reasons why it's important, but I think I would imagine you have all kinds of levels who will be watching this.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think the best way to describe it is to just kind of get a good understanding of who Saturn is and who Jupiter is, right? So Saturn, of course, is the god of time, also known as Kronos. But I like to think of him as the carpenter of the zodiac. That's my way to archetypally name him. He just takes things down and he builds them back up. That's really his function. I always say when he moves into a new sign in a new house, in our own personal charts, we go through a remodel in that area of our life. And it usually starts with a demo day. And that's, kind of where we are right now. So I'm sure all of us somewhere in our life feel like we've just kind of been demolished by, oh, wow, I don't have this part of my life organized, which is Aquarius. So maybe it's people's relationships, their identity. I don't really know who I am. I need to rebuild that. Work, wherever it is. So that's the archetypal image of the carpenter, Saturn. And then Jupiter, of course, is known as Zeus or God. And I like to think of him as, there's this movie with Matthew McConaughey called Beach Bum. And he's like, oh no, I just got it mixed up with Neptune. Neptune is so square the nodes right now, it hurts my head. Sorry, I got it mixed up with Neptune. Everything's confused right now. But Jupiter instead, he is just the guy who brings the flashlight, the lantern, so to speak. So wherever he goes, he makes that thing bigger. He illuminates it so we can look at it. Santa Claus is maybe the analogy I use with him most frequently. He's got the big old belly and he's the big old everything. And so people love Jupiter because he brings abundance, some people think, but of course we know he just makes things bigger. So if it's great, it's bigger. And if it's challenging, it's bigger.
It's bigger too.
Yeah. So when the carpenter and Santa Claus kind of get together, they, in the sky, they say, well, I have this great big idea. And Saturn's like, okay, I'll build it. And so they've been doing that consecutively for the last 850 years in Earth signs. And then they did one in Libra, a couple decades ago. I don't remember the date of that one. But this building of the dream has been in Earth energy for a very long time. So now that these two guys came at the 0 point of Aquarius to build the new consciousness, they're saying, okay, we want to build something new. So, we've demolished everything else. I think you guys are good on that. So we're going to kind of reconstruct, but they're also going to have to demolish what is Aquarius first. What is this? Like, what is this energy we're all feeling? And what is technology going to look like now? And what is school going to look like now and policy and government and so on and so forth? That's where we are, especially right now at the beginning of 2021. And then over the consecutive next many hundreds and arguably thousands of years, we're going to see this kind of come to fruition.
Yeah.
So that's how
I like you. Yeah, because Jupiter and Saturn, they meet every 20 years. But like you say, this one of the reasons this one's so big beyond the just, the fact that it's at 0 degrees at the start of Aquarius, and it's kind of like, is because it marks this big shift, elemental shift into air. And we've started now with Aquarius. I mean, yeah, you're right, though. It had done 20 years it had that cycle where they met in Libra in 1980.
Yeah, 20 years
in 1980, I think. And then it went back to Earth in 2000. And then now 2020, it's like we're into air for good. Yeah. And so maybe a little bit let's talk a little bit about the Aquarius archetype, kind of some of the things that, are emerging more and more now into the consciousness. How about Ray, Gio, do you guys?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So
Thanks.
Aquarius it rules the 11th house of the zodiac. It has an energy of synergy. How we've taken what we've known reconceptualizing. So it's gonna break down certain things and then reconceptualize it. So it's like kind of a new understanding. And the fact that it had conjuncted with Saturn, there's just going to be because Saturn rules slow. So Saturn's going to be a slow rebuild. Like people think entering this age that we're going to jump right in, but it's going to be this slow but steady energy, and it's going to be this reforming. Saturn and Jupiter also ruling, more of the government and society in itself. We're going to look through a reform, and it's going to be a gigantic reform. It's not going to be how we've ever seen it before. I hear a lot about souls coming to this planet around this time because it is this has never happened before. So we've come to kind of clear our souls and raise up to the 5D energy. So Aquarius is going to rule that. It's going to be the water bearer. It's going to bring, since it rules the common man, it's going to enlighten the common man. It's going to make everything equal. It's also a symbol in metaphoric enclosure in water. And water, in this instance, it represents the collective unconscious and the hologram. So it rules ether. It's funny that we're all connecting on the internet because Ethernet, networking. It does rule metaphysics too and quantum potential. So it's going to have this new approach, even to science, very futuristic, quantum law, energy streams and timelines, the many potentials, being innovative, definitely more of like invention and, kind of the artist flourishing and bringing things into the community. So very community-based, very, advancement-based, and definitely a big shift out of the age of Pisces, where we were in the age of belief. We were in the age of experiencing the God you cannot see, but coming into this knowing energy, because Aquarius likes to know. That's the saying for Aquarius is I know, coming out of Pisces, which is I believe. So definitely an enlightenment period, but definitely scientific as well. So it's bridging those two things. So Gio can take it from here.
Yeah. So, sorry, kind of hit my video there. All right. Yeah. So, as we said, Aquarius is that air sign, but it's also the fixed air sign. So, it has this sort of sense of focus and kind of sticks to the vision. And then it's also Aquarius is kind of like asking what humanity is in need of. It could kind of like, you could kind of see how the ideals are coming in to more of a community-based, this sense of connectivity. Also on the other side, there's like that real side of extremist ideals that could come into play, real radicalized stuff as well. So there is a sense of balance that is needed for that as well. As far as also like it has this A to B connectivity. So that's kind of good because it's like direct to the information it needs to get to. But the problems with that also can be that the information or the truth can be lost in the translation as well. Other than that, there's a sense of brotherhood, humanitarianism, and these like utopian ideals. It can be inflexible, also stubborn as well. I know that's more of a Taurus aspect, and you're speaking to a Taurus, so I get how I could be stubborn as well. But just like Ray said, it rules the ether. So it rules the airwaves. So we see that with technology. We see that with our internet as well. Those are just some of the few things.
I think I think it was in your podcast where you guys talked about it as a structure, as Aquarius is structured chaos. I guess, making reference to the fact that it has, Aquarius is ruled by both Saturn and Uranus,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so right now it feels like chaos. I think that we'd all agree, which also, I very much attach to kind of Aquarius's, more revolutionary spirit, if you will, right? So, but I am interested in this idea of the structuring of chaos, because you kind of wonder, where is it all going to freeze into the new? What's it going to develop into? And we're just at the very beginning of this transition, right? So it's very hard to imagine. 1,500 years ago, who would have imagined where we're going to be at the end of at the end of the age of Pisces, right? But I guess that's what that's the question I want to pose. Where are we going to be in 2,000 years with this age of Aquarius? Or what do you kind of see where some of these themes might lead, I guess is that's my question.
Well, I have an answer to that. I think, in the world, because Aquarius rules, governments and very for the people, society in general, the collective community, and all that, like friends and transpersonal love are going to be very important. It's going to be about community. It's going to be about, excelling in areas. But I think coming out of an age of Pisces, where it was a very spiritual age, and very actually the two fish do rule separation, right? It rules the separate language, the separate color, the ideals of, Aquarian's going to unify that. It's going to bring us all together. And I think through that chaos, we're going to end up, it's not going to seem so prevalent at the moment, but we're going to find our tribes. I think it does rule community, but the irony of it is it's not all just about community. It's about who vibrates with you. It's about who is on your frequency. So coming out of an age of where we experience trauma, separation, all these different types of things, we're going to go through a purge, I think, at first. I think we're going to go through this time where we purge out these energies, any low frequency energies. Something's not of genuine to us, not authentic. It has to go. And I think that's the chaos right now. I think the chaos really does come from, that purging of the energies, and then coming one into ourselves. And before we come together as a community, the irony is we have to find and go within first before we can find our tribes, before we could find our soul groups. And, the next 2,000 years, we don't know what it's going to bring, other than the fact that obviously technology, I think, is going to bring aliens. I think it's going to be less of a decentralized government. I think it's going to be more of, that's where the community aspects comes in. It's like we're detached from each other, we're separate, but then at the same time, we're going to have our own centralized mini governments and things like that. Because it rules community, I feel like that's going to be very important. The fact that we're vibrating with the tribe.
That's interesting. The social organization aspects. I mean, I guess we should get to where we're coming from, I guess, which is the age of Pisces. But to me, the rise of nationalism, for example, or that was age of Pisces. I mean, to me, it was about Pisces is a lot about surrendering and going into the whole, and to me, it's the melting pot, right? As opposed to Aquarius, which is much more like multicultural, well, like the salad, we get to all be different, but in a bowl, whereas, Pisces was much more, you meld into one identity, right? And so this idea of community that's associated with Aquarius is very interesting, because one of the thoughts I keep having is, well, what does that look like? It's not, because it's also very much about the individual and standing out and being your own unique self, right? So on a societal level, I wonder what kind of changes we might be seeing. I mean, maybe Eugenia, I think that you talked a little bit about this issue of community and the role that it's going to play in this age of Aquarius as well.
Yeah, I think that I think it's almost impossible for us to fully have any comprehension of exactly how this will look, of course. I think I'm really mostly interested in the relationship between technology and human. And I think that's going to be a really complicated conversation that we're having inside ourselves and with others. And, I'm quoting another astrologer, Stick Evers, when he said, Aquarius is dystopia or utopia, which I kind of liked. I know utopia is technically the word for the place that can never be, but I think there's going to be two sets of behavior on this earth for a while. I think both are going to have to figure out how to merge with machine. And it will be, have you co-opted with machine, or are you cooperating with the machine, or is the machine working you? So it's kind of like a new overlord, right? It's like it was the age of Pisces. It was the Pope and the Catholic preacher and teacher and all of those different things, right? And they were relaying the word of God, and we had to practice a lot to get there, right? Shame and guilt, and shame and guilt's been used to manipulate humanity for a very long time. Now technology will be used to manipulate humanity. And so I think that we're going to have to be incredibly discerning about what makes us human. And, something I've been thinking a lot about at the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021 is you hear a lot of fanaticism right now. You'll hear it even from me because it's a fanatical time. It's, the nodes are in Sagittarius and Gemini square Neptune, which makes everything super, super easy to understand. Not at all. Just so confusing. And I think that what we have to kind of do is learn our lessons from the age of Pisces before we really can understand Aquarius. You're hearing a lot of, this is a battle of light and dark. And you're hearing it on both sides, which I find really laugh out loud funny. But I do think there's an energy right now where we're trying to figure out, what did we learn from the age of religion? What did Christ teach us? What did the Buddha teach us? What did Allah teach us? What did, Yoda teach us? Whatever it is, what did these teachers give us? The morality, they gave us integrity. That's what these texts were intended for, or to give us some kind of moral compass, right? That there's a darkness in the world. It lives inside of us and it lives outside of us. And to dismiss it, we can be owned by it, right? If we're like, oh no, everything's just light and love and everything's all joyous. Aquarius isn't about light and love, I don't think. I am an Aquarius. I'm as an Aquarius, I see things very by the number. I look at it very data driven and statistics, and I'm not as heart centered. And so what can happen is if we don't recognize what those teachers taught us about morality, we're probably going to move into a dystopic future where we haven't discerned technology from us and the power it can have over us, right? Because we trust things very naively. But if we have like a moral compass or our integrity intact or our heart, Leo, the age of Leo, which is, going to be part of this, is we can maybe learn to be human with machine. We're going to have prosthetic arms that are going to be robots. We are going to have, the technology is absolutely there. They haven't announced a lot of these things, but to heal blindness, to heal by shooting nanotechnology into your eyes, into your occipital nerves, and it'll go in there and it'll fix it right up for you. I mean, this is going to look really, really, there's going to be a lot of ethical dilemmas, a lot of challenges ahead. And I do think the piece about community is important from the perspective that you got to really pick how you feel about technology. It's almost like it's the new religion. Are you Christian? Are you Muslim? Or are you Jewish? It's like, are you pro-tech? Are you anti-tech? Or are you integrative tech? And I think those camps are being formed as we speak. The behavior of these big tech companies, for example, shows their power. And that's really shocked a lot of humans, right, who trusted the big tech. So are we in touch with our integrity, our heart? Is this the right thing we should be doing? Are we with people who are helping us keep our integrity and our, godlike nature that we learned from Pisces, so that we can maybe have a more utopic outcome here? But I do think there's going to be those two living simultaneously. Maybe one on this planet, one on a different planet. I don't know what that's going to look like. Maybe on multiple planets, but I definitely also feel very strongly that we'll be an interplanetary species, sooner than later, in the next 5 years, really. And we will no longer just be humans on Earth. We will now be an interplanetary species. So that's going to be a complicated new ethical moral dilemma. And do you want to go to Mars with your people, or do you want to stay on the Earth and figure it out? Or, those are the things. That's why we had to kind of choose a camp in 2020 in a sense, because we had to kind of figure out, how do we want to navigate this new consciousness? And, what is our belief about God, technology, integrity, good, evil, all those things, right? So That's my suspicion. And then of course, like ridiculous technology, like the craziest things, there will be houses in the air. I feel confident about that.